It never satisfies like a thunderclap. The thing that destroys a young footballer's future rarely arrives as a single dramatic moment. Instead, it creeps in like fog. A skip session here. A lazy afternoon there. A slow, invisible shift from the player who burns for greatness into the player who simply expects it. And by the time anyone notices, the window has already started to close. This is the story no one wants to tell about Cristiano Ronaldo Jr. Not because it has already happened, but because it could. And if it does, it may unfold so quietly that the world will only understand the damage long after the chance to fix it has passed. Right now, Ronaldo Jr. sits in one of the most extraordinary positions any young footballer has ever occupied. He carries a last name that opens every door in the sport. He has access to the greatest training environment imaginable. He watches one of the most successful athletes in human history eat, sleep, train, and recover under the same roof. The resources surrounding him are almost unfair in their richness, and yet all of that could become his greatest enemy. Because the biggest mistake Ronaldo Jr. must avoid is not a lack of talent. It is not a lack of opportunity. It is not even the weight of his father's shadow. The biggest mistake is something far more dangerous, precisely because it does not feel like a mistake at all when it is happening. It is the slow, comfortable drift away from hunger. Let that sit for a moment. Hunger. That desperate, restless, almost painful need to prove yourself. The thing that wakes you up before your alarm. The thing that makes extra reps feel like a privilege instead of a punishment. The thing that every elite footballer in history has carried inside them like a fire that refuses to go out. And here's what makes Ronaldo Jr.'s situation uniquely precarious. He was born into a life where almost everything most young players spend years chasing has already been handed to him. Wealth, fame, connection, recognition. The very things that usually fuel ambition already exist in abundance around him. So the question becomes deeply uncomfortable, but absolutely necessary to ask. Where does the hunger come from when the table is already full? This is not about criticizing a teenager. This is about understanding a pattern that has repeated itself across generations of football. Talented sons of legendary players who had every physical gift, every advantage, every pathway cleared before them, and yet never came close to matching the level people expected. Not because they were not good enough, but because somewhere along the way, the fire dimmed, the edge softened, the desire to be great was replaced by the assumption that greatness would simply arrive on schedule. That is the trap, and it is waiting for Ronaldo Jr. whether he knows it or not. Now, some might argue that Cristiano Ronaldo himself would never let his son fall into that kind of complacency. And from the outside, it certainly looks that way. Ronaldo has been remarkably public about the standards he sets inside his household. Stories have circulated for years about how he monitors nutrition, encourages competition, and demands excellence from everyone around him, including his children. But that is only where the danger begins. Because discipline imposed from the outside is not the same as discipline built from within. A father can create structure. A father can demand effort. A father can remove distractions and set expectations. But no father, not even one as relentless as Cristiano Ronaldo, can manufacture the internal drive that separates a professional footballer from a generational one. At some point, Ronaldo Jr. will have to want it for himself, not to please his father, not to satisfy public expectation, not to live up to a name. He will have to want it because something deep inside him simply refuses to accept anything less. And that kind of motivation cannot be inherited. It has to be discovered, tested, and chosen again and again, especially on the days when choosing comfort would be so much easier. What people rarely think about is how seductive the wrong path actually looks at his age. Social media followers growing by the thousands, cameras pointing at him simply because of who his father is. Brands likely already circling with interest. The validation is constant, effortless, and dangerously detached from actual performance on the pitch. Imagine being a teenager and receiving that level of attention before you've truly earned it through your own achievements. For most young minds, that kind of premature recognition creates a subtle but powerful illusion. The illusion that you have already arrived, that the hard part is over, that the world already sees you as special, so maybe you do not need to prove it the way your father once did, clawing his way out of Madeira with nothing but raw talent and terrifying determination. That illusion is the real enemy, not a rival defender, not a harsh coach, not a bad game or an injury. The illusion of arrival before the journey has truly started. And this is where things get serious. Because once a young player starts building his identity around attention rather than improvement, the decay is almost impossible to reverse quickly. Training becomes something you post about rather than something that reshapes you. Matches become performances for the highlight reel rather than laboratories for growth. Criticism starts to feel like an attack instead of a tool. And slowly, invisibly, the gap between the player you could have become and the player you are actually becoming widens into something permanent. The hidden cost of this path is staggering when you lay it all out. First, focus disappears. The ability to lock in on one goal and pursue it with single-minded intensity gets fractured by 100 small distractions that each seem harmless on their own. Then, confidence shifts. Instead of being rooted in genuine competence and hard-won skill, it becomes fragile, dependent on external approval, likes, comments, and the opinions of people who will forget your name in 5 years. Opportunities begin to narrow. Coaches notice. Scouts notice. The football world is brutally observant, and it can tell the difference between a young player who is building something real and one who is coasting on a famous last name. Respect erodes, quietly at first. Teammates stop looking at you as someone who elevates the group and start seeing you as someone protected by privilege. That shift in perception can poison a dressing room relationship faster than almost anything else in the sport. And perhaps most painfully, identity cracks. Because when you have spent your formative years being told you are destined for greatness, but have not done the unglamorous work required to actually achieve it, you are left stranded in a terrible middle ground. Too famous to disappear, too unproven to command genuine admiration, trapped between a legacy you did not build and a future you did not fully commit to creating. That is the cost, and it is not theoretical. Football history is littered with young players who paid it in full. So the deeper question lingers. Is it harder to stay hungry when the world gives you everything early? The honest answer, the one that nobody in Ronaldo Jr.'s circle probably wants to say out loud, is yes. It is significantly harder. Not impossible, but harder in ways that most people do not fully appreciate because they have never experienced that kind of early abundance. The players who have overcome it, those rare sons of legends who carved their own paths, all share one common trait. At some critical moment in their youth, they made a conscious choice. They chose the difficult road. They chose to ignore the noise. They chose to measure themselves not against public expectation, but against an internal standard that no amount of luxury or fame could satisfy. That is the choice waiting for Ronaldo Jr., and it may be the most important decision of his young life. Behind the cameras, behind the private jets, and the luxury homes, and the global spotlight, there is a teenager standing at a fork in the road. One path is paved with comfort, easy validation, and the slow erosion of everything that can make him extraordinary. The other path is rough, demanding, unglamorous, and lit only by the kind of obsessive personal fire that money cannot buy and fame cannot replace. The biggest mistake Ronaldo Jr. must avoid is not a single action. It is a direction. It is the gradual, almost invisible turn toward comfort at the exact moment when his development demands discomfort. It is forgetting that greatness is built through discipline, sacrifice, and relentless self-honesty, not through attention, followers, or a last name that the entire world already knows. The talent is clearly there. The opportunity is clearly there. The only real question is whether the hunger will be there when it matters most. If you found this video thought-provoking, go ahead and smash that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Drop a comment below and tell us, do you think Ronaldo Jr. has what it takes to avoid this trap? We would love to hear your honest opinion. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.